Hello and welcome to our webinar, Adult Faves. I'm Donna Seaman, Adult Books Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom an hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links. You can also download the slides and title by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. You are in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar. Look for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we will pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Last but not least, Booklist offers closed captioning on all our webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click on Live Transcript. You'll see that icon on the toolbar mentioned above. From there, you can select Show or Hide Subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions anytime by selecting Subtitle Settings. So today, yes, we have the pleasure of hearing from Annie Mazes, Senior Manager at the Adult Library Marketing at Workman Publishing, Ellen Whitaker, Assistant Marketing Manager at Bloomsbury Publishing, Golda Rademacher, Library Sales and Marketing Director at WW Norton Company, Dina Sherman, School and Library Marketing Director at Disney Publishing Worldwide. Dina will be presenting titles today for National Geographic. And Elam Ali, Senior Publicist and Trade Marketing Lead at ECW Press. First, we will hear from Annie Mazes. Annie handles adult library marketing for all imprints at Workman Publishing Company. She also heads up ALMA, Adult Library Marketing Association. It's a committee. Some favorite titles of hers include The Orphan Master's Son and Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast. After 10 years, Annie still can't believe she gets to book talk with librarians every day. Hashtag dream job. Thanks for being here today, Annie.
Hello. I'm not quite sure why I have Christmas lights on. I took them off. Here we go. Hello. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much. Just one housekeeping thing. Workman was recently purchased by Hachette Book Group. And so I have a new email address. So I love hearing from you. Please keep that coming, but make note of my new email address. It is annie.mazes@hbgusa.com. But I'm still here and I'm waiting to hear from you. So if you have any questions or you see anything you want, if I have ARCs, I'm happy to send them. Please get in touch. My next slide is going to talk about some very imminent titles. So you probably have heard of them. I hope that you have them bookmarked. I just want to make mention specifically of The Wonders, which won a very prestigious Book of the Year award in Spain, where it was originally published. This gorgeous translation has already gotten 3-star reviews. And Fat Girls Hiking, the Booklist starred review, called it an invaluable guide and said kudos to the author for changing the narrative on inclusivity in the outdoor community. Starting with my next slide, these are books that are publishing a little bit farther out. Do as I say, not who I did. There is a lot of pressure on early sexual encounters and very little real advice, especially for women. So Ali Drucker, an experienced sex and relationships writer, has written this unflinchingly honest advice book on topics for newly independent adults, think 17 and older, set against the backdrop of college, weaving humorous personal experience with expert advice and current research on sexuality. This is an inclusive, research-backed guide that makes clear all of those hazy details and open conversations on taboo subjects. Next up, we have Healing by the New York Times bestselling author of The Shift, Teresa Brown. She tells a very poignant and personal story about breast cancer. She brings us along from the mammogram that changed her life through her own diagnosis, treatment, and recovery. Despite her training and years of experience as an oncologist, an oncology nurse, and hospice nurse, she finds herself constantly surprised by the lack of empathy she encounters. This is for readers of Being Mortal or Between Two Kingdoms. Kirkus gave Healing a starred review. Next up, we have Linked, a definitive guide to maximizing LinkedIn and navigating the changing hiring landscape by two gurus, Omar Garriott and Jeremy Schiffling, both former LinkedIn marketing heads with invaluable experience. The book lays out 5-step job search framework, tying each discrete action to something that you actually can do on LinkedIn. It contains helpful sidebars, checklists, and successful case studies. Next up is a novel by the wonderful Bill Rohrbach. 16-year-old Sindra is sent to a reform camp in Montana. She's a very privileged white girl who has evaded more severe punishment. While there, she becomes transfixed by Lucky, a mysterious camp employee. The two fall in love and escape into the Rocky Mountains, but they can only run from the outside world for so long. And the naive fantasy they have of a future together doesn't quite come to fruition. They will be kept apart for decades. This is for readers of Richard Russo, Jane Smiley, John Irving. Booklist starred review was one of the best reviews I've ever read. It said, Rohrbach's understated, luminescent novel beautifully evokes an idyllic world created where two hearts are braided together. Next up is Overthinking About You. Dating is hard, but when you live with anxiety, OCD, and/or depression, dating can be a minefield. And Overthinking About You is a memoir-driven self-help book that explores the complex connection between brain and heart. Woven in throughout our interviews with clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, sexologists, relationship experts, real-life couples, all to help you walk away from this book feeling less alone and ready to tackle dating with more confidence and less work. Next is 1,000 Ways to Pay Attention, is another memoir. Rebecca Schiller's young family moved to a beautiful 2-acre homestead in the English countryside. Rebecca was so excited about the prospect of what was going to happen with her young family. But then she begins to suffer from frequent falls, uncontrollable rages, and mysterious lapses in memory. After several misdiagnoses, the answer comes and it's utterly unexpected. She has very severe ADHD. So this is her story of a harrowing year spent trying to figure out how to manage that. It is compulsively readable. Think Brain on Fire meets the collected schizophrenias. It's a very inside-out view of one woman digging for the truth of her own neurodivergent mind. Next up is Trailed for true crime readers. Side note, unrelated to anything, but I love the podcast Crimes of the Centuries. So if you're into true crime, that's my recommendation. Anyway, Trailed. In May of 1996, Julie Williams and Lolly Winans were brutally murdered while backpacking in Virginia's Shenandoah National Park. The young women were skilled backcountry leaders, and they had met and fallen in love the previous summer while working at a world-renowned outdoor program for women. Despite an extensive investigation, the case remained unsolved for years. In 2002, John Ashcroft announced he'd be seeking the death penalty against Daryl David Rice. 2 years later, that case against Rice was suspended. The investigation grew cold. Journalist Catherine Miles was a professor at Lolly Winans Wilderness College in Maine when the 2002 indictment was announced. It haunted her so much that in 2016, on the 20th anniversary of the murders, she began looking into the lives of these adventurous women. She dives deep into the case, winning the trust of victims' loved ones, as well as investigators, gaining access to key documents. She discovers evidence of cover-ups, incompetence, crime scene sloppiness, becomes convinced of Rice's innocence, and zeroes in on a different likely suspect, certainly for fans of I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Next up is Changing Gears. Licensed clinical therapist Leah Day felt herself drifting away from her son, so she decided to make a drastic play to reconnect. And in this memoir, she chronicles the journey that they both took biking the Transamerica Bicycle Trail. They find that if they can push themselves physically and emotionally, they really are capable of reconnecting and doing pretty much anything. Next up is Green Fire. Francis Mallman is an Argentine grill master. He is known for his primal style of live fire meat cookery, now with the goal of creating dishes that are better for our health and our world's health. He shares his recipes and secrets for perfecting grilled vegetables and fruits using his world-renowned technique. Slathered, seared, baked, blackened, or fried over the flames, Mallman's fire-cooked vegetables are full of flavor. Desserts and cocktails are included, and there are gorgeous color photographs throughout. Next up is the month-by-month gardening guide. How, when, and where are common questions for every home gardener, no matter what level of expertise. This compendium of practical advice shares thousands of tasks and chores broken down for every week of the year. It covers every type of plant, vegetables, flowers, trees, herbs, houseplants. Readers will find general growing advice, suggestions for care, tricks for helping your houseplants thrive. It's a must-have for any home gardener, new or experienced, seeking clear guidance on garden success. I know I'm going through a billion things. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm glad this is all online. The True Crime File, perfect for newcomers and hardened true crime junkies. The True Crime File is a book designed to deliver the mixed pleasures of true crime across more than 200 stories. It's 400 pages packed with tales of slashers and serial killers, grifters and conmen, dogged investigators and miraculous survivors, and of course, the story behind the immortal New York Post headline, Headless Body in Topless Bar. Next is Metropolis by beloved B.A. Shapiro, author of The Art Forger. When a harrowing accident occurs at the Metropolis storage warehouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts, was it really an accident? The joy of this book is the characters. You have 6 mysterious people who rent units in or are connected to the storage facility. Serge, an unstable but brilliant street photographer. Zach, the building's owner, who develops Serge's photos to find clues. Marta, an undocumented immigrant who's finishing her dissertation and hiding from ICE. Liddy, an abused wife and mother. Jason, who has left his corporate firm and practices law in his unit. And Rose, the office manager who takes kickbacks to let people live in their units. As the characters try to discover the details of the accident, B.A. Shapiro both dismantles the American dream and builds tension to a very exciting conclusion for readers of Janelle Brown, Megan Abbott, and Laura Lippman. Change of pace here. Hitler's Boy Soldiers is Helene Munson's story, father's story. She resurrects his journal from World War II and embarks on a meticulous investigation exposing how the Nazis trained 300,000 impressionable children as soldiers. In 1937, Helene's father, Hans, was enrolled in this elite German school. And so Munson really explores the lifelong effects of brainwashed children coerced to join a party they didn't understand, dealing with inherited trauma, the nature of being a victim, and the burden of guilt. Next up, we have Jackie and Me, Louis Bayard. He wrote The Pale Blue Eye. This is Jackie before she was Jackie. It's 1951, and she first meets Jack. It is narrated by Lem Billings, who was Jack's best friend throughout his entire life. It is historical fiction, though, so Lewis does take some creative license, but it is a wonderfully told story about love and sacrifice, friendship, and betrayal. It got a starred review recently after these slides were due, so I didn't put it in. But it's just a great fun read. Next up is The Poet's House. Carla is in her 20s, unsure of her life, and she gets a job working at Viridian House. Viridian is a lauded aging poet who Carla becomes enamored of. This is really a story of art, how it's both transformative on the ways it can be leveraged as commerce, where women's place in art comes for readers of writers and lovers, and the female persuasion. Next up is The World of Natural Wine. Natural wine, not really familiar with it. A lot of people don't really understand what it is. This breaks down the who's and the what's of natural wine, explains how it's made, where you can find it. It really just means that it is made with organically farmed grapes and without use of additives. And it's just as delicious. Next is Calling for a Blanket Dance, which I'm so excited about. This is an own voices story by a debut novelist who authentically captures the people of his community. It is about a young man who's trying to figure out where he stands in the world. He has a lot of anger in him based on everything that's gone on with the people in his life, his family expectations. It is truly wonderful. I hope everybody downloads and reads this. And finally, Kalina the Soothsayer. This is fantasy. Kalina's family has had the gift for generations, the ability to see and predict the future. It is wonderful. Kalina does not have that gift, and so she needs to use trickery to support her family, but then she's kidnapped by someone who wants to become all-powerful king, and she has to find her way out of it using her resources and her brains. So much fun. It's The Goblin Emperor meets Uprooted with a voice like Gideon the Ninth. That is all from me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Annie. That was so great. Okay, next we hear from Ellen Whitaker. Ellen is the Assistant Marketing Manager at Bloomsbury Publishing, a graduate of the Columbia Publishing course. She previously worked at Workman Publishing. Well, there you go. And as a bookseller at Sundog Books in Florida. Welcome, Ellen.
Hello, so nice to be here. So let's get started. As a reminder, please email me at ellen.whitaker@bloomsbury.com for any arcs. If you happen to see a cat jump up behind me, that is my cat, Kitty Kitty. He is a terrible assistant, but very cute. So next slide. Okay, so first, I just wanted to briefly showcase 3 of our February titles, one of which came out last week. Catch the Sparrow is perfect for any true crime reader. Cleopatra and Frankenstein is reminiscent of Modern Lovers and any and all of Sally Rooney's books. And then The Dark Queens, which comes out later this month. It's all about female power in the medieval age. Excellent, all 3 of them. So next slide. So Little Rabbit comes out in May. Ling Ma, author of Severance, called it a darkly sensuous tale of awakening that will quietly engulf you in flames, combining the sticky sexual politics of luster with the dizzying perceptive intimacy of cleanness. Little Rabbit is a wholly new kind of coming of age story about lust, punishment, artistic drive, and desires that defy the hard-won boundaries of the self. Next slide. Meet Me by the Fountain. I'm really excited about this one. It's an inside history of the mall. Few places have been as nostalgized or as malls. Since their birth in the 1950s, they have loomed large as temples of commerce. In their prime, they proved a powerful draw for creative thinkers such as Joan Didion, Ray Bradbury, and George Romero, who understood the mall's appeal as both critics and consumers. Yet today, amid the aftershocks of financial crises and the global pandemic, as well as the rise of online retail, the dystopian husk of an abandoned shopping center has become one of our era's defining images. Meet Me by the Fountain is a highly entertaining and evocative promenade through the mall's story of rise, fall, and ongoing reinvention for any readers of any generation. This one comes out in June, and you may remember Alexandra from her previous book, Design of Childhood. Next slide. A Life in the Light. This is Mary Pfeiffer's new book from the best-selling author of Women Rowing North and Reviving Ophelia, a memoir and essays reflecting on radiance, resilience, and the constantly changing nature of reality. In her luminous new memoir and essays, Mary Pfeiffer taps into a cultural moment to offer wisdom, hope, and insight into loss and change. In A Life in Light, she explores what she's learned about how to balance despair with joy, utilizing and sharing with readers every coping skill she has honed through her lifetime to remind us that there is a silver thread of resilience that flows through all of life, and that despite our despair, the light will return. In this book, she points us towards the light. And this one comes out in June. Next slide. The Great Passion. From acclaimed bestselling author James Runcie. Many of you may remember him from our Grantchester series, which was also a TV show. This is a meditation on grief and music told through the story of Bach's writing of the St. Matthew Passion. Joyous and deeply moving, The Great Passion is an imaginative tour de force that tells the story of what it was like to sing, play, and hear Bach's music for the very first time. It's perfect for any historical fiction lovers, and this one will be out in March. Next slide. The Great Man Theory. From acclaimed winning author, Teddy Wayne, the hilarious, incisive, yet deeply poignant story of a liberal armchair revolutionary desperate to save America from itself. It's very funny, and it's bubbling over with insights into America's cultural landscape and a certain type of cast-aside man who wants to rectify it. The Great Man Theory is the work of a brilliant original writer at the height of his powers. We've come to this one. If you've watched Netflix, The Chair, featuring Sandra Oh, it's similar to that. It's very entertaining, good read. And this one comes out in July. Next slide. Dirtbag, Massachusetts by Isaac Fitzgerald. This one is a Publisher Weekly's top 10 memoir of the season, a book page, most anticipated book of 2022. It's coming out in July. Isaac Fitzgerald has lived many lives. He's been an altar boy, a bartender, a fat kid, a smuggler, a biker, a prince of New England. But before all of that, he was a bomb that exploded his parents' lives, or so he was told. In Dirtbag, Massachusetts, Fitzgerald, with warmth and humor, recounts his ongoing search for forgiveness, a far-reaching vision of masculinity, and a more expansive definition of family and self. Gritty and clear-eyed, loud-hearted, and beautiful, Dirtbag, Massachusetts is a rollicking book that might also be a lifeline. Next slide. The Half-Life of Valerie Kay, from the author of The Watchmaker of Hilary Street and The Kingdoms, an epic Cold War novel set in a mysterious town in Soviet Russia. In 1963, in a Siberian prison, former nuclear specialist Valerie has mastered what it takes to survive: the right connections to the guards for access to food and cigarettes, the right pair of warm boots, and the right attitude toward the small pleasures of life so he won't go insane. But one day, all that changes. Valerie's university mentor steps in and sweeps him from the frozen camp to a mysterious, unnamed city. It houses a set of nuclear reactors, and surrounding it is a forest so damaged it looks like the trees have rusted from within. Valerie is expected to serve out his prison term, studying the effect of radiation on local animals. But as Valerie begins his work, he is struck by the questions his research raises. Based on real events in a surreal Soviet city and told with best-selling author Natasha Pulley style, The Half-Life of Valerie Kay is a sweeping new adventure for readers of Stuart Turton and Sarah Gailey. This one comes out in July. Next slide. Okay. The House of Fortune. This one I'm super excited about. We just had a cover reveal by The House of Fortune by Jessie Burton. Alive with the magic of 18th century Amsterdam, an enchanting, fantastical standalone companion novel to the sensational New York Times bestseller, The Miniaturist, which has sold over 2 million copies worldwide. A feat of sweeping magical storytelling, The House of Fortune is an unput-it-downable novel about love and obsession, family and loyalty, and the fantastic power of secrets. This comes out in August. We don't have galleries quite yet, but please email me if you are interested in receiving one once we get them. And next slide. So I wanted to highlight a bunch of delicious cookbooks we have coming out this year. To start off, we have Bread Song by Kitty and Al Tate. They're a father-daughter pair. It's a cookbook full of heart that explores the redemptive power of baking. It features more than 80 recipes, including cinnamon buns, cheese swirls, and tahini brownies. Bread Song is a celebration of bread and baking and an inspiring story of the life-saving power of discovering a passion. They chronicle their journey on Kitty's Instagram at Real Orange Bakery. It'll inspire you to bake. And this one comes out in May. And then we have Bake, Paul Hollywood's upcoming cookbook. This one is his best ever recipes for the classics. It's the ultimate baking book from Paul Hollywood, the judge of the Great British Baking Show, from classic cakes like Victoria Sandwich and chocolate fudge cake through brilliant breads like foolproof sourdough to savory and sweet pasties like sausage rolls and Danish pasties. These are the only recipes you'll need to create perfectly delicious bakes time and time again. And this one comes out in July. The Year of Miracles. I love this cover. Recipes about love, grief, and growing things. This is from the author of Midnight Chicken, A Year in Recipes, exploring the kitchen as a place for healing in the wake of tragedy. NPR described Ella's first book as Bridget Jones's self-effacing wittiness, Julia Child's companionable forgiveness, and Sylvia Plath's poetic prose. This cookbook is about a year in the kitchen and in the garden under the fire escape steps, a year of grief and hope and change, of cardamom, cinnamon, chicken rice, blackberry miso birthday cake, and sticky toffee Guinness brownie pudding, a year of loss and every kind of romance and fried ham sandwiches, a year of seedlings and pancakes, a year of falling in love, a year of recipes, a year, in other words, of minor miracles. With tender vulnerability, mesmerizing prose, and delectable recipes, The Year of Miracles is a touching, unforgettable book on finding hope through food. Ella has many fans, including Nicole Cliff, who posted about Midnight Chicken all over her beloved Twitter and dearly missed by me personally, Twitter. And this one comes out in July. And then we have the Brownie Diaries, recipes for happy times, heartbreak, and everything in between. 50 modern, mouth-watering recipes for the world's favorite chocolatey treat. Fun and user-friendly, the Brownie Diaries offers brownie-based solutions to all life's challenges, big and small. Brownie Diaries is the perfect book for brownie lovers everywhere. And this one comes out this April. And then we have Natural Flavor, quick and easy plant-based Caribbean recipes. Craig and Sean charmed cooks everywhere with their essential introduction to home-cooked Caribbean food in original flavor, and now in natural flavor, they're spreading the love, offering inspiration and punchy Caribbean flavors to the feel-good plant-based diet taking the world by storm. And this one comes out in March. And lastly, on this slide, we have curry every day. Over 100 simple vegetarian recipes from the first Michelin-starred Indian chef, delicious veggie curries from around the world. And this one comes out in May. So next slide, please. I then wanted to highlight a few of our paperbacks. We have Zori with this beautiful new cover. As shown here, it was a finalist for the 2021 National Book Award in fiction, and the paperback comes out in May. We have Gravel Heart, which is out now. It's from the author who was the winner of the 2021 Nobel Prize in Literature. And we have a couple more of his paperbacks coming out in March as well. And then we have This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. This one was a New York Times bestseller, and it was winner of the 2021 Financial Times and McKinsey Business Book of the Year Award. And this paperback will come out in September, so a little further out. And then we have Outlawed, which is coming out in paperback next week. It was a Reese's book club pick, instant New York Times bestseller, Bellatrix book club pick, Indie Next Selection, Library Read Selection, Amazon Editor's Choice, and Washington Post Best of the Year. Pierre Nacy, this paperback came out last September, but wanted to highlight it again. It is a New York Times bestseller, winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction, World Fantasy Awards finalist. And then we have Artifact, and Artifact's from the author of Scary Old Sex, and it has received a ton of praise, especially from the Wall Street Journal and New York Times Book Review, and this one comes out on March 1st. So next slide, please. So thank you so much for attending today's webinar. We greatly appreciate any library reads, votes, any praise on Edelweiss, NetGalley, wherever, and as always, feel free to email me at ellen.whitaker@bloomsbury.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, now I'm hungry for food and more books. And now we are so happy to have Golda Rademacher with us. Golda started as a sales assistant at Norton 20 years ago. She is now the library sales and marketing director, which seems appropriate since both of her parents were librarians. You can find Golda on Twitter and Instagram and at WW Norton Library. Kick it away, Golda.
Thank you, Donna, and hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can find links to our DRCs and to sign up for our newsletter through this library marketing link that you see on the slide. And now for some highlights from our spring and summer lists. To Stormwood by Philip Gray has a starred book list review, thank you, which said, immersive and eerily atmospheric, Gray's novel delivers vivid historic detail and gripping suspense. This historical novel is set just after World War I, with a young woman searching for her fiancé, Edward, on the battlefields of northern France. She's warned that this open-air morgue is no place for a civilian, but Amy is willing to brave the barbed wire, the putrid water, and the rat-infested tunnels that dot the landscape. Her search is upended when she discovers the scene of a gruesome mass murder. And soon Amy begins to have suspicions that the killer is still out there. Fly Girl is the memoir that Anne Hood's fans have been waiting for. Anne grew up in a small town, and getting a job as a flight attendant was her way to see the world. She worked for TWA in the late 70s and early 80s, when there was still some glamour to flying, but there was also a lot of change. She carved Chateaubriand in the first class cabin, found romance on layovers in London and Lisbon, and walked over 1 million miles in high heels, smiling as she served thousands of passengers. She talks about how the job empowered her despite its roots and sexist standards. Packed with funny, moving, and surprising stories of life as a flight attendant, Fly Girl captures the nostalgia and magic of air travel at its height. The Immortal King Rao by Vahini Vara is a debut novel with elements of speculative and dystopian fiction. The story is narrated by Athena Rao, who is sitting in a prison cell. The government has been replaced by corporations, and people are no longer citizens, they are shareholders, and their worth is determined by their social capital. It turns out that it was her father, King Rao, who created the technology that led to this. Athena tells King's story from growing up on a coconut grove in India to moving to the USA for grad school, and his advances in computers and technology that changed the world. But why is Athena in prison? And what happened to King Rao? Well, you got to read the book to find out. Norton publishes Wide Sargasso Sea and several of Jean Reese's other books, so we're excited to be publishing the biography, I Used to Live Here Once, The Haunted Life of Jean Reese by Miranda Seymour. In addition to researching Reese's papers and letters, Seymour was able to interview people who knew Jean Reese when she was alive. Seymour also looks at the influence of Reese's childhood in the Caribbean, her tortured relationship with Ford Maddox Ford, her time in Paris, and her alcohol and drug dependencies. The figure who emerges for Seymour is cultured, self-mocking, unpredictable, and shockingly contemporary. One's Company by Ashley Hudson is a debut novel that tackles grief and trauma through what sounds like a silly premise, but it is quite compelling and a little dark. I actually stayed up way too late last night to finish reading this because I had to find out what happens. The main character, Bonnie Lincoln, just wants to be left alone, to come home from work, shut out the voice that reminds her of her devastating losses, and unwind in front of the nostalgic golden glow of her favorite TV show, Three's Company. When Bonnie wins the lottery, she uses the money to recreate the iconic apartment set and slip into the lives of its main characters. While her best friend Crystal tries to drag her back to her old life, Bonnie is determined to transcend pain, trauma, and the baggage of her past by immersing herself in the ultimate binge watch. So the editor who worked on this novel had never seen Three's Company before she read this. So there's proof that you don't have to be a fan of the show to get into the novel. And you can give this to your readers of Mona Awad, Kristen Arnett, Binny Kirschenbaum, or Otessa Moshfegh. France by Graham Robb is for all your Francophiles out there. Graham Robb blends history, travelogue, portraits of important personalities, and his own experiences of living and traveling in France in this history full of charming anecdotes and beautiful landscapes. Maria Maria by Maritza Rubio is a collection of stories that defy genre boundaries. Immersed in Latinx culture and brujeria, these stories set across the tropics and megacities of the Americas celebrate strong Latina characters who follow their instincts and fight for what they love. Fine, a comic about gender by Rhea Ewing. Rhea is an artist who was trying to process their own thoughts about gender, so they set out on a project to interview other people about experiences with being transgender, questioning, or non-binary. Questions such as how do you identify invited deep and honest accounts of adolescence, taking hormones, changing pronouns, and how these experiences can differ depending on culture, race, and religion. From beautifully rendered scenes, we also see Ewing's story of growing up in rural Kentucky, grappling with their identity as a teenager, and ultimately finding themselves through art. The Colony by Sally Denton is a true crime investigation into the murder of 9 fundamentalist Mormons in 2019. Were they killed by members of the local drug cartel? And if so, why? In The Colony, the best-selling investigative journalist picks up where initial reporting on the killings left off, and in the process tells the violent history of the Le Baron clan and their homestead. Big Girl by Mecca Jamila Sullivan is a debut Own Voices novel set in Harlem in the 90s. 8-year-old Malaya hates when her mother drags her to Weight Watchers meetings. She'd rather paint alone in her bedroom or enjoy street food with her father. For Malaya, the pressures of her mostly white Upper East Side prep school are relentless, as are the expectations passed down from her painfully proper mother and sharp-tongued grandmother. The novel explores food addiction and diet culture with nuance and levity, interrogating the intellectual, emotional, and bodily lives of young Black women contending with disordered eating. Mecca was on a Booklist Authors and Arcs webinar a few weeks ago in January, so I hope you will check out the recording of that. Inventing the It Girl by Hilary Hallett is a biography of romance writer and society darling Eleanor Glynn. When her husband gambled their fortune away, Glynn became the first commercially successful writer to challenge the sexually straitjacketed literary code. As she churned out novels, she consorted with world leaders from St. Petersburg to Paris to Cairo before movie producers lured her to California in 1920. There, Glynn crafted the romantic aesthetic of Hollywood's golden silent age, coining the term it, a quality of magnetism she projected onto actresses like Clara Bow. Weaving deep archival research, Hallett presents Glynn as an icon of sexual and professional independence who would encourage new generations to chase their own desires wherever they led. The Metaverse is the first book on the next big thing. Matthew Ball explains what the metaverse is and how it is poised to revolutionize every industry and function, whether we like it or not. And coming from Tin House Books, The Year of the Horses by Courtney Maum captures her journey out of depression and the horses that guide her physically and emotionally on a new path forward. You don't have to love horses to identify with the way the relationship between animal and human can help to heal the mind and heart. The Maker of Swans is an atmospheric historical mystery by the author of The House on Vesper Sands, which was a Library Reads pick last year. The wealthy Mr. Crow and his butler Eustace are harboring the mysterious Clara on a secluded English estate. Secret societies, murder, and shadows from the past are threatening all those Mr. Crow cares for. Vera Kelly, Lost and Found, is the third and final book in the Vera Kelly series. In this one, Vera and her girlfriend Max travel to Southern California to see Max's family, but then Max disappears. This is Vera's most personal and high-stakes investigation yet. And Death and the Conjurer by Tom Mead is from Mysterious Press. Set in 1930s London, the magician turned sleuth Joseph Spector has to solve multiple locked room murders that seem impossible but might just be connected to each other. The American Mystery Classic series has lots of great picks for anybody who likes mysteries from the early 20th century. And I wanted to tell you about a new series from New Directions. They are publishing collections of stories, novellas, and other works by some of their most well-known authors in these ND Storybook hardcover editions. You'll find Yoko Tawada, Clarice Lispector, Cesar Ira, and more. And fans of the immensely popular No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai will be excited to see more work from him in Early Light, which is the one in the bottom right corner of the slide. So of course we have tons more books coming out this spring and summer, but there's never enough time to talk about them all. So I hope you will check out our complete catalogs on Edelweiss, and thank you again for listening.
Wow, beautifully well done. So many exciting books, great designs. And now, yes, Dina Sherman. Dina has been the Director of School and Library Marketing at Disney Hyperion since 2009. Prior to that, she was the School and Library Senior Marketing Manager at HarperCollins Children's Books. Dina received her MLS from the University of Pittsburgh and worked as a children's librarian for 10 years, first at the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh and then at the Brooklyn Children's Museum. As a librarian, Dina wrote reviews for School Library Journal and wrote articles and presented on the topic of museum and library collaborations. Thank you for joining us, Dina.
Thank you so much. I'm realizing that I need to put a bio together for these adult buzzes that are not so child heavy. I am new to the adult library marketing scene, but I am very excited to be here. For those of you who don't know, National Geographic is now part of Disney Publishing Worldwide. So I'm very excited to take some time today to share some upcoming titles of theirs with you. And I'm going to sneak a few Disney titles in at the end as well. So first up, a few titles that recently came out that I just want to make sure you didn't miss. Lost Cities, Ancient Tombs takes you to 100 of the world's most incredible discoveries, spanning 6 continents and more than 3 million years of history. The book is organized chronologically, so it moves from the dawn of humankind up to the discovery of the Titanic to reveal how explorers and archaeologists have uncovered the clues that illuminate our past. And this past fall, Dr. Anthony Fauci was the subject of a major National Geographic documentary. Fauci, Expect the Unexpected is compiled from hours of interviews drawn from that documentary, offering an intimate view of one of the world's greatest medical minds, as well as universal advice to live by. Nepali climber Nims Persia is the first man ever to summit all 14 of the world's 8,000-meter death zone peaks in less than 7 months, breaking the previous record of 7 years. Beyond Possible is his remarkable memoir, and it's tied to the acclaimed Netflix documentary, 14 Peaks. 50 States, 500 Campgrounds is an illustrated guide that shares 500 of the best tent, cabin, glamping, and RV campgrounds. I'm definitely a glamping girl myself, including opening dates, booking information, activity recommendations, and more in all 50 states, plus Canada, the US Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. In addition to destination information, this guide has expert recommendations for activities, including hiking, biking, water sports, the best restaurants for those days you need a break from the camp stove, and nearby attractions from sites within the nearby national and state parks to local museums. Never Give Up is an exciting new memoir by superstar TV adventurer Bear Grylls. Admired by millions as the star of Man vs. Wild and the acclaimed series Running Wild, global adventurer Bear Grylls has explored places few would dare to go. Bear explores the valuable lessons he's learned in the wild, opens up about his most personal challenges and achievements, and celebrates the true value of adventure and the enduring importance of courage, kindness, and resilience. Written for outdoor enthusiasts and armchair adventurers alike, Never Give Up offers an inspiring path to help readers live their best lives. Now, trees are a very hot topic these days. They're being seen as a potential antidote to climate change. In 2020, the World Economic Forum announced an initiative to plant 1 billion trees. Into the Forest, The Secret Language of Trees is a beautifully illustrated book. I mean, all National Geographic books have these gorgeous photographs, right? That takes readers on a fascinating journey through the emerging world of tree ecology, where we are learning that trees communicate over vast distances through a complex wood wide web, if you will, where we're learning how they relax and heal us and how they might just save humankind from the worst of climate change. Speaking of all that gorgeous photography, Octopus, Jellyfish, Seahorse is a gorgeous photography book that features portraits of some of the ocean's most extraordinary creatures. Each of the sections in the book is derived from major stories David Lichtschwager shot for National Geographic magazine. I mean, look at that photo. And each is accompanied by terrific essays written by beloved nature writers Elizabeth Colbert, Jenny Holland, and Olivia Judson. David's work is fine art photography. You might have seen his exhibitions at the Museum of Natural History in New York or in the new Ocean Hall at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in DC. He's won many awards for his work, including the prestigious World Press Photo Award. Continuing with all the gorgeous National Geographic photography, this book includes wisdom from experts, need-to-know travel information, the best scenic overlooks, hiking trails, practical wildlife spotting tips. 100 Great American Parks takes you to all 63 national parks, as well as 37 state, recreational, and city parks and green spaces. With a park in every state, each entry explores the breathtaking landscapes, remarkable histories, extraordinary wildlife, and the need to conserve and explore each destination. With a foreword from legendary recording artist Garth Brooks, the quote unquote voice of America, that was kind of news to me, but apparently he is the voice of America. This innovative guide will lead you to experience the greatest park experiences the world has to offer and an understanding of these natural open spaces. In this inspiring travelogue, the Catch Me If You Can, celebrated traveler and photographer Jessica Namango, the first Black woman on record to visit all 195 countries in the world, shares her journey around the globe with fascinating stories of adventure, culture, travel musts, and human connections. In this one-of-a-kind memoir, she reveals her top 100 destinations from her global adventure. Beautifully illustrated with many of her own photographs, the book documents her remarkable experiences in each country, including things like a harrowing scooter accident in Nauru, which is apparently the world's least visited country, dog sledding in Norway, and swimming with humpback whales in Tonga. Namango's stories are love letters to diversity, beauty, and culture, and most of all, it's the people she meets along the way. Throughout, she offers bucket list experiences for other travel lovers looking to follow in her footsteps. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to steal a few minutes here to share some other Disney Publishing worldwide titles. So I know that adult coloring books are still going strong and still popular, and I wanted to let you know about a couple. We have an updated edition of one of our most popular, the Golden Girls. I don't think the Golden Girls ever gets old, right? We all love them. And then Walt Disney World is celebrating its 50th anniversary. So we've got a new coloring book that is perfect for fans. As part of these anniversary festivities, Delicious Disney Walt Disney World is a holistic look at the Florida resort's culinary past, present, and future. It's filled with a heartfelt narrative and behind-the-scenes anecdotes, mouth-watering food photos, gorgeous Walt Disney Imagineering and concept artwork, nostalgic restaurant menus and ephemera, and a little Disney magic. This is cookbook meets culinary history coffee table book with more than 60 recipes, including an assortment of appetizers, main courses, sides, desserts, and some libations, all from establishments across the resort. No word on if there's a Dole Whip recipe in there. I'm still waiting to find out, but. And then last up, I'm excited to present the second book in our Meant to Be series, which are modern day rom-com retellings of stories we know and love. The book is by best-selling author Jasmine Guillory, and it's the story of Isabel, who is an editorial assistant at a publishing company who has to work with a beastly author. I think you can get where I'm going with that. Now, the first book in this series, excuse me, If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy, was a top library reads pick. So I hope you guys will read this and vote for this one too. It's one of my favorites. Thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us. You can follow us online on social media and look for Blads and Galleys up on NetGalley and Edelweiss. Most of our Nat Geo titles are just Blads, but we do have a few of the full books up there on NetGalley for request. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dina. So much to think about. Trees, romance, everything. And now we reach our final panelist today. We're so excited to have Ellen Ali with us. Ellen is a writer and publishing professional based in Toronto. She graduated from the University of Toronto in 2014, and since completing the Humber College Publishing Program, she has worked in marketing and publicity at Canada's Ballet Jorgen, Penguin Random House Canada, and Dundurn Press. She currently works as the senior publicist and just this year took on a new role as the trade marketing lead, congratulations, Ellen, at ECW Press. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Donna, and thank you all for attending. I should really take writer out of my bio, though I haven't written anything in like 5 years. I'm really excited to be here today, and I always like to start these presentations with a quick intro into ECW Press, since we are a Canadian indie and some of you might not have heard of us. Next slide, please. So ECW Press is one of the largest mid-sized publishers in Canada. We have one of the most diversified sort of lists in North America as well. Our thing is really that we have something for everyone, and I highly recommend you follow us on Twitter for Something for Everyone Friday, where we prove that point. We've published over nearly 1,000 titles that run an incredible spectrum of poetry, prose, fiction, nonfiction, and I'm really happy to be able to share some of those books with you today. Next slide, please. Something that's really important to us at ECW is accessibility. In 2021, we were awarded Benetech's Global Certified Accessible Certification. That means that all of our ebooks are created through Benetech's Born Accessible production process. They're all screen reader friendly and built to meet the needs of those who are unable to read standard print. That commitment to accessibility extends into our work as one of Canada's leading audiobook publishers. In 2020, we produced 117 audiobooks, almost entirely in accessible audio, and 94% of our 2021 productions were accessible. All of the titles that I will be talking about today are going to be available in print as well as accessible ebook and audio. So let's jump into the books. Next slide, please. The first one I want to talk about today is Change for Good, an action-oriented approach for businesses to benefit from solving the world's most urgent social problems. This is by Paul Klein and will be out in March. So you don't need me to tell you that 2020 was quite a year of massive upheaval. And what Paul and I think a lot of us have found is that the pandemic has forced a lot of people to reevaluate their lives and how work sort of is incorporated into their lives, as well as reevaluating their expectations from companies and the companies that they work for as well. enter Change for Good. Through Paul's 35 years of personal experience, as well as case studies and practical tools, Change for Good aims to inspire readers and their organizations to make the shift from what Paul calls corporate social responsibility light. That is a very passive approach to social responsibility, usually doesn't go beyond making statements, to taking an active role in social change. The prescriptions that Paul makes are grounded in 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. And a really important part of this is that the book also includes and incorporates the lives of, or the stories of people who have lived experiences with social problems in identifying promising solutions and collaborating to build these solutions. So it's not just executives talking to other executives, it's a very sort of grassroots book with really actionable and prescriptive tools for business leaders and employees who want to create impact that extends beyond the bottom line. Next slide, please. This is Play It Right, the remarkable story of a gambler who beat the odds on Wall Street. It's an upcoming memoir that's perfect for readers of The Biggest Bluff and A Man for All Markets, and anyone whose favorite movie is 2008's 21. Kamal Gupta, the author, is currently based in New York, and in this book, he chronicles his journey from New Delhi to Las Vegas to Wall Street, from Indian immigrant to the ultimate insider, and from professional gambler to money manager at some of the world's largest hedge funds. After moving to the US to complete his master's in computer science from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Kamal spent 2 years as a world-class blackjack player and then decided to take his gambling knowledge to the world of high finance. There, he found that he was constantly under pressure to take bigger and bigger risks to make even more and more money. But he refused. He decided that instead he would always play it right and know that there was such a thing as enough money. And it actually led to an incredibly successful career, even though this was highly unusual, something that very few, if any, of his Wall Street peers understood. In this book, Kamal offers an insider's look into the world of high finance, where fear and greed tend to rule. And he does so with a really unique and original voice. This is very fast-paced. It's very funny at times and reads more like a work of fiction, even though everything that he's recounting actually happened. Next slide, please. So now we're moving into fiction, and I'm so excited to be able to talk about this book. What is Written on the Tongue by Anne Lazurko is a richly immersive historical fiction. Her debut novel, Dolly Bird, won the Willa Award for historical fiction, so it's a genre that Anne is very comfortable in. But what is incredible about this book is that it's deeply personal to Anne. It was inspired by the life of her father, who had always, when she was growing up, he always talked about fairly openly about living under Nazi occupation when he was growing up in Holland. But it wasn't until he was 85 that he kind of casually mentioned having a nervous breakdown in Indonesia. This piqued Anne's interest, and she ended up exploring the history of the Dutch colony and the Indonesian independence movement. But what she found was that the story had largely been silenced. In an incredible, really beautiful letter that I would absolutely love to share with you all, Anne talks about how the weight of memory is sometimes hard to bear. And for 70 years, the Netherlands had pretty much silenced this part of their history. They'd sent young men just released from Nazi occupation to in turn become an occupying force, to fight for a cause that wasn't theirs in a place that they knew nothing about, and it went badly. I couldn't imagine the havoc wrought on the psyche of those soldiers, and yet that's exactly what I had to do. The soldier that is the main character of this story is a 20-year-old man named Samuel Vandenberg, who's just been released from a Nazi forced labor camp when he quickly finds himself drafted into the Dutch army and sent to the island of Java to help regain control of the East Indies colony. This is a story of one young man's journey from being occupied to holding the gun, from having an enemy to becoming one. And that makes it incredibly unique. It's also a story that readers have really it's resonated with them. We've gotten glowing reviews on NetGalley and Goodreads. A lot of people have called it epic, thought-provoking, brilliant, stunning. It's a fantastic book club pick, and we will have discussion questions available. Next slide, please. Now we move to contemporary fiction. Help I'm Alive by Gurjinder Basran is a cross-generational story about a teen's death and how the community around him is forced to confront who they are, who they were, and who they should be after this enormous loss. Gurjinder says that Help I'm Alive is an invitation to tell the truth of how we are. It's a book for anyone who has ever not been okay. So when footage of Jay's death is shared on social media, his former best friend Ash is forced to wonder what happened to their friendship and questions all the relationships that he has now. Winona, Jay's troubled girlfriend, struggles with guilt and abandonment. Anik, Ash's older brother, is on a search for the meaning of life, but hasn't left his basement apartment in months. And Pavan, Ash and Anik's mother, finds that Jay's death has really torn her open and lay bare all of her personal and maternal anxieties. A great comp for this is Celeste Ng's Everything I Never Told You. In the same way, it's about how we connect with the people around us, but also how the remnants of our lives can continue to reverberate once we're gone. Gurjinder is a wonderful, wonderful author who explores grief in a lot of her books. Her previous novels, Everything Was Goodbye and Someone You Love Is Gone, tackled with this subject too, and she does so beautifully. She's a fantastic speaker. We'll also have a book club guide for this. And I should say that the book does have YA crossover. It's an adult book, but most of the characters are teens. And so if you have older teen readers who are looking for something that's a little bit more literary, this is a great pick for them. It's also coming out in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And also it's a great pick for Mother's Day. Gurjinder's experience is trying to sort of parent her teens through these very difficult years as they transition into adulthood was a big part of the book as well. So I really hope that you'll pick this one up. It's one that we absolutely love. Next slide, please. The Punishing Journey of Arthur Delaney by Bob Kroll is a 19th century family saga about a father's love as expressed through his 20-year quest across Canada and the US. The main character, Arthur Delaney, is devastated by the passing of his wife and finds himself kind of stricken at the thought of having to raise his 3 children on his own. And so he decides to place his children in a Halifax orphanage and runs off to join the Union Army in the American Civil War. But his trauma during the war and his experiences in a prisoner of war camp really changed his perspective on family, and he decides to sort of odd job his way up the east coast of the US in order to return to Nova Scotia. But when he does, he finds that the orphanage is gone and his children are gone too. What follows is a 20-year journey across Canada to find them and find redemption. It's an epic post-Civil War journey with a Canadian twist and manages to do an incredible and emotional job of telling the story in under 200 pages. So if you're looking for a quick and very emotional saga, this is perfect for you. Next slide, please. The last book that I wanted to talk about is actually one that's coming out in October, but we will have ARCs very soon, and it's a really big book for us. So I wanted to very briefly, quickly talk about it in 1 minute. Set against the eve of World War I, a plane crash outside an English village brings together the lives of 4 people. Miriam, who's recovering from another miscarriage and decides to learn how to fly as an escape from her life. Audrey, a middle-aged reproductive rights activist who's shunned from society. Audrey's nephew, Frank, who teaches Miriam how to fly while battling his own growing sense of alienation and his growing attraction to the crashed pilot, Peter. Through the interplay of voices of these characters, As Little as Nothing explores early feminism and reproductive rights movements, the resilience of women, the strength of new bonds, and the various ways that we reinvent ourselves throughout our lives. It's a feminist historical fiction perfect for readers of Kate Quinn, Ariel Lawhon, and Julie Kelly. Pamela is a wonderful author. She's the editor of The New Quarterly, a literary journal, and the director of the Wild Writers Festival. She has published before her debut novel. The Deserters came out in 2018, but this is her first work of historical fiction, and we're really excited to be able to introduce her to this sort of growing trend of feminist reinventions and feminist retellings of history. Thank you so much. So that's all for me. I hope that you will request some of our books on Edelweiss and Catalyst. And I also just very quickly wanted to talk about my job as trade marketing lead. This is a new position for me, and also a new one at ECW Press, where basically my job is to be the #1 contact for librarians and indie booksellers. If there is ever a book that you are looking for, please do shoot me an email, elhem@ecwpress.com, or just say hi. I love making new friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and congratulations. Thank you to all our wonderful presenters. I have to say that if anyone's despairing of what I'll call public discourse in quotes, just think about these books and know that intelligent life is living on our planet. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Not yet a subscriber? Why not? Pair the print reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com. Lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this very special webinar offer to get Booklist and all its facets for only $75. And let's not forget about our exciting new magazine, which would be part of your subscription, patron-friendly, librarian-approved, and free with that special Booklist subscription, Booklist Reader. We're so proud of this. It's our new digital-only magazine highlighting diverse readers' advisory recommendations for all ages. It's here, it's fun, it's easy to use. To see and share the latest issue, visit booklistonline.com/reader-issues. And I want to really, again, thank our splendid, wonderful panel for today's webinar. A huge thank you to panelists from Workman Publishing, Bloomsbury Publishing, WW Norton Company, Disney Publishing Worldwide, and National Geographic, and ECW Press. Thank you, everyone. Stay well. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.